I never expected my husband to ask for divorce, just as I gave birth. Then I took a life-changing breath, the kind that fills your lungs with hope but leaves your heart trembling with fear. The sterile scent of the delivery room mixed with my sweat and the undeniable weight of pain. I struggled to focus. The beeping machines, the soft murmurs of nurse sit all faded into a dull backdrop. I could feel life pouring from me, raw and powerful. I clutched the bed sheets, my fingers trembling, but something darker loomed in the air, suffocating. "Sarah," he said, his voice cold, cutting through my euphoria like a knife. "I can't do this anymore." The words hung between us, heavy and thick, as the doctor's voice faded into a blur. My heart raced, and in that moment the world shrank. It was just us, two souls caught in a whirlwind of shock. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to lash out at the man I once loved, the one whose hand I imagined holding forever while we welcomed our child. But why now? Why during the happiest moment of my life? I felt my dreams blanketed in joy crumble into dust. What about our plans? Our late-night talks? The nursery, painted in soft blues and whites? Those visions blurred, twisted by his revelation, and why Mother's face flashed in my mind, full of love and support. She had stood by my side through every heartbeat of my pregnancy. Would she understand this fracture I couldn't comprehend? I needed her, yet I felt incredibly alone. Then, a baby's cry pierced through my fog, sharp and demanding. There he was, a little miracle we had created. A second chance. I looked into those tiny eyes, swirling with innocent wonder and trust. But as I gazed, dread seeped into my heart. Would I raise him alone? The doctor placed our son on my chest, a weight so profound it nearly crushed me. In that sacred moment, I felt a flicker of hope. I would protect him. I would fight for him. But what fight awaited me? I felt a lump in my throat. And then my husband turned, his face a mask of resignation. He was walking away, stepping back into a shadow I wasn't ready to confront. I was a mother now, yet my world felt unsteady, shaken by the loss of a life I once knew so well. "Wait," I shouted, but he didn't turn back. The silence swallowed my words whole. What did this mean for us? For him? For me? My heart ached with questions I couldn't voice. I cradled my son, my tears mixing with the joy of new life. Could I find a way through this storm? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sterile walls of the hospital room felt like they were closing in around me. The echo of my husband's rejection pulsed in my head, drowning out everything else. I lay there, the weight of our newborn son in my arms, a beautiful contrast to the devastation growing in my heart. Each tiny breath he took was a reminder of the life we had planned together, and each cry resonated with the fear of the unknown future that awaited us. I gazed at his tiny features, soft nose, delicate mouth was flooded with warmth. But it was short-lived, eclipsed by the cold reality of empty promises and shattered dreams. Would I really be able to do this alone? My chest tightened at the thought. I hadn't yet opened my phone to tell my mom the news, terrified of how she would respond. My father would surely want to rush to my side, but I couldn't bear the thought of explaining why my husband had disappeared into the shadows of our past. Hours passed, though they felt like an eternity. Nurses rotated in and out. Their smiles brimmed with kindness, but only deepened the loneliness seeping into my bones. I wanted to imagine my husband coming back, kneeling beside the bed, apologizing and promising everything would be okay. Instead, I was left with unending silence and what-ifs that clawed at me, that I finally mustered the strength to lift my phone, unsure of where to start. Before I could send a message, there was a soft knock on the door. My heart leapt, but the feeling was fleeting as it opened to reveal a nurse carrying an armful of neatly folded baby clothes. "Just dropping off some things for your little one," she said with a radiance that warmed the room. "You can never have too many onesies, right?" She laughed lightly, and despite myself, a smile crept across my face. "Thank you," I whispered, the weight of gratitude tangling with sorrow. She knelt beside me, arranging the clothes with careful finesse. "You're doing wonderfully, you know. It's a tough start, but you have a beautiful baby boy. Hell be your light." I nodded, collecting my breath, but the struggle remained. The nurse tucked the last onesie into the drawer and paused. "Do you have family around? Someone to help?" Not really," I managed the lump in my throat returning. The thought of asking for help felt weaker than ever. Her eyes softened. "You'd be surprised how many resources there are. You don't have to go through this alone, even if it feels that way right now." And then she reached over, squeezing my hand gently. The warmth pressed against my skin sparked a flicker of hope. It was a reminder that even amidst heartbreak, kindness existed. The moments dragged on until dusk began painting the sky outside my hospital window, colors spilling into the room. I watched the light wane, my heart heavy with the realization that I had yet to make a single decision about my future. With my husband's absence looming over me, I felt paralyzed as I glanced down at my son, his brow furrowed as if sensing my turmoil. I wanted to believe that somehow things could still turn out okay. But the fear that clawed at my chest felt relentless, strangling those flickers of optimism. Could I truly raise him with just my love? Then came a rapping at the door that startled me for a moment. Slowly, I turned to face it, and to my shock, my mother stepped in, her expression a blend of worry and determination. "Mom," I whimpered, tears springing to my eyes. She rushed to my side and enveloped me in her arms. "Oh, honey, I was called the minute you went into labor. I had to come. I had to be here for you." Her words, wrapped in warmth and familiarity, struck chords deep within me. But her embrace, meant to be a sanctuary, amplified my guilt for not being the brave daughter she expected. "What's going on, honey? Is he here? Lawrence?" I hesitated, looking down at my son, then back at my mother, who searched my face for answers. The silence stretched between us like a chasm filled with unspoken fears. Just as I was about to speak, an unexpected blur rushed past my thoughts. Lawrence was coming back this time with finality. My heart raced as I heard footsteps echoing in the hallway, growing louder with each passing second. A tight knot formed in my stomach. This was a moment I craved yet dreaded. Would he finally face the consequences of his decision? Would he have the heart to look our son in the eyes after shattering our family? Before I could take a breath, Lawrence walked into the room, and the air thickened with tension. His eyes flickered between me and our child, the love he once carried now replaced with uncertainty and fear. "Sarah," he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. In that moment, everything hung in the balance. Our shared past, the fractures of our present, and the looming uncertainty of our future. I could see the flicker of regret in his eyes, but beneath it was something darker, a shadow of resolve that chilled me. And as he took a step forward, my heart raced not with hope, but with the knowledge that all of this was just the beginning of a fight I never wanted. The surreal nature of that moment hung in the air, thick with unspoken fears and emotions. Lawrence stood there, as if he had just wandered onto a stage he didn't belong on, the lights blinding him to the reality surrounding us. I could hardly discern his intentions as I searched his face for any trace of the love I once knew, but all I saw was a stranger intertwined with the remnants of the man I married. "Lawrence," my voice cracked, the tension tightening around my throat. I felt my mother's hand on my shoulder, a reminder that I wasn't facing this alone. Despite the weight of it all, I asked that he paused, swallowing hard. "Is that our son?" His eyes softened for just an instant before returning to their guarded state. Here was a man who had broken his vows, yet the sight of our child unsettled him, perhaps forcing him to confront the truth he had tried so hard to escape. "Yes," I answered, my heart pounding, each beat echoing the unsteadiness of the ground beneath us. "He's here." Lawrence took a hesitant step closer, and I felt my body tense in response. This was the man who had chosen distance over love. How could I let him near our son now? Can I hold him?" His voice quivered, betraying the wall he attempted to erect. I glanced at my mother, seeking reassurance, but all I found was an unfamiliar flicker of fear mirrored in her eyes. I felt as if every decision I made hinged on the precipice of this moment. "Lawrence," your words failed me. Should I deny him this chance, this connection? But how could I trust him? The silence stretched like a taut wire, sharp and threatening. Suddenly, the nurse entered again with her soothing presence, sensing the tension. "Is everything all right?" she asked, looking between us, a smile fading into concern. "I am just getting to know him," Lawrence replied, though the words hung in the air, fraught with uncertainty. "It's all right," the nurse encouraged, her eyes sparkling with kindness. "You can hold him if Sarah agrees." I hesitated, torn between the safety I felt holding my child and the faint glimmers of hope that lurked beneath my spiraling fears. A part of me wanted to believe in Lawrence's capacity to change, to be the father this child deserved, but the scars of betrayal still stung, fresh and unresolved. With deliberate slowness, I passed my son into Lawrence's waiting arms, a mix of empathy and fear washing over me. I watched as he cradled the baby against his chest, the small form fragile against the weight of the decisions that loomed over our lives. He looked down, his expression shifting from uncertainty to a tenderness that caught me off guard. "I miss so much," he breathed, his voice breaking as he gazed into our child's eyes. "I don't deserve this chance, but to want to try it." I leaned back, the sting of tears threatening to spill as I witnessed a moment I had both longed for and feared. "Then what do you want?" I challenged, my voice stronger than I felt. "You can't just come back, Lawrence. You can't take a snapshot of happiness and pretend everything can just go back to the way it was." He swallowed hard, the flicker of his resolve dimming under the weight of my words. "I know," he sighed, his gaze faltering, "but I can't walk away anymore. I want to be part of his life. I want to be part of yours if you'll let me." The room filled with an unsettling silence as my heart waged war against itself. I wanted to scream, to tell him that he had shattered our lives, that the warmth of his embrace was a burden I wasn't ready to accept. But part of me, the hopeful part, wondered if change was possible. If sensing my internal struggle, my son whimpered in Lawrence's arms, breaking the spell. Lawrence's gaze snapped to me, filled with urgency. "I'm sorry. I'm scared, and I don't know how to fix this." "But he'll do anything." Before I could respond, the nurse chimed in again, her presence a soothing balm. "How about we keep it simple for now? Let's take one step at a time." Her kind smile felt like an anchor amidst the chaos. I nodded, grappling with emotions swirling like a storm around me. But just as I began to consider the possibility of taking that first step, the door swung open abruptly, revealing a figure I hadn't expected. Me sister, Nora. Her eyes widened with disbelief as she took in the scene before her, her breath catching in her throat. "What's going on?" she cried, her voice a dissonant note in the tenuous harmony we had just constructed. The gravity of the moment shifted again, and I felt my spirit drop as I registered the implications of her surprise. Just when it felt like we might begin to unravel the tangled threads of our lives, a new complication had woven its way in. Lawrence tensed, uncertainty clouding his face, while my mother's hand tightened on my shoulder as she processed the arrival of my sister. "Sarah," Nora said, her eyes darting to our child and back to Lawrence. What did I walk into? A rush of emotions flooded my senses, a precarious mix of hope, fear, and now confusion. Could anyone truly understand what was at stake? Would I be able to protect my son from the chaos that surrounded him? In that moment, the door to our new beginning threatened to close, and I had no idea if anyone would be willing to pry it open again. Everything felt like it was spiraling back into uncertainty as I faced the reality that our family, so intensely woven with love, grief, and betrayal, was shifting once more. I was left standing at the edge, uncertain of which way to turn. The weight of Nora's presence hung heavy in the air, curling around us like fog. It was a moment that should have been filled with joy, yet instead, it rippled with tension and uncertainty. I could feel the sharpness of her gaze cutting through the fragile atmosphere in the room, demanding answers that felt impossibly complex. "Sarah, please, just tell me what's happening," she pressed, her voice carrying both concern and an edge of disbelief. The baby cooed softly in Lawrence's arms, blissfully unaware of the turmoil swirling around him. I opened my mouth, but no words came. The truth seemed too raw, so fractured and marred by pain that I doubted it could be captured in a simple explanation. How could I convey a story so layered with betrayal and desperation? I felt as if I was standing on the precipice of a deep abyss, unsure whether I could fly or if the fall would break me. "Lawrence," I finally let his name escape like a whispered incantation, as though acknowledging him in front of my sister would unravel the very fabric of what we'd just begun to stitch together. "He wants to be part of our son's life." Nora's expression twisted into something I couldn't quite read: anger, disbelief, a flicker of empathy. She glanced at our child, then back at Lawrence, whose eyes now bore the weight of unspoken apologies and yearning. "And what do you want, Sarah?" she asked, her tone suddenly fierce, stripping away any pretenses that dared to exist. I felt the underlying pressure of that question. What did I want? The notion echoed in my mind, brimming with confusion. My heart screamed for stability, for comfort to lean into amidst chaos. But my mind shook its head, recoiling from the memories of Lawrence's betrayal, the hurt so profound it felt unforgivable. I swallowed hard, grappling for clarity when all I felt was an entangled mess of hopes and fears. "I want," the words clung to my throat, resolute yet so weary. "I want to protect him," I finally said, gesturing toward the child, sleeping peacefully in Lawrence's arms, blissfully unaware of our failures as adults. Nora took a step closer, her eyes softening. "And you think letting him back in is the way to do that? What if he hurts you again, Sarah?" I couldn't answer, as dark memories surged forward, images of broken promises and hollow words that echoed through our once shared life. But then there was also this moment, this shaky beginning chiseled at the edges by the hope that perhaps Lawrence could change, that the love I once cherished could flicker to life again. "That I don't know," I finally admitted, my voice trembling with vulnerability. "I don't know if I can trust him, but I don't want our son to grow up without a father." Lawrence shifted, the baby nestled against him, his expression set with determination amid the emotional tempest. "I want to prove myself, Sarah," he said, his voice steady. "I want to be here, not just as a father, but to support you, to make this right." "But how can you, Lawrence?" Nora cut in sharply. "You've done nothing but run away from your responsibilities. It's not just about what you want. It's about trust, about healing." Her words launched into my gut like a cue ball breaking apart a carefully arranged pack of emotions. Trust. How could I begin to trust him again when everything felt so precarious, so overwhelmingly broken? As if sensing the heightened tension, the baby let out a tiny whimper, drawing the focus back to him as Lawrence instinctively adjusted his hold, soothing the child with gentle whispers. It was a moment that surprised me. It highlighted his potential, a flicker of warmth in an otherwise frigid reality. But just as I began to consider his potential, the door swung open once more, but this time it wasn't just anyone stepping through. It was my father, looking disoriented and concerned. I could see the worry twisting his face as he took in the scene before him. "Sarah?" he inquired, stepping inside the room. His gaze darted to the small baby in Lawrence's arms, then to me, and finally resting on Nora with a questioning frown. "What's going on?" My heart sank again, the weight of having so many eyes on our fragmented family pressing down uncomfortably on my shoulders. "Dad," Nora jumped in to save me, her voice a mixture of frustration and urgency. "It's not an easy situation. It's about Lawrence wanting to come back." Things were complicated. My father's brow furrowed deeper, and he stepped closer, his instincts kicking in as a protector. "What do you mean? Sarah, is this really what you want? Can you trust him after what he did?" The protective tone in his voice resonated, but it drummed up defenses within me that had been silently guarding my heart. Trust isn't a simple line to draw or erase, Lawrence replied quietly. Taking a step forward, the baby still cradled safely against him. I'm asking for a chance to rebuild, to show Sarah that I've changed, that I'm ready to be who I needed to be all along. But can you? My father's voice was lined with skepticism. Just because you say the right words doesn't mean you have the power to change. Trust is built through actions, not promises. Each word felt like a blow, sharpening the urgency of my situation. I stood there, feeling fragmented and exposed, my entire being torn between conflicting desires, me yearning for what had been, my fear of repetition, my protective instincts screaming to shield my son from inevitable heartbreak. This family gathering heightened with emotion. I suddenly felt dizzy, the room spinning in circles of consequence and clarity. Lawrence's confession hung heavy in the air, alongside the weight of my father's doubt and Nora's fierce loyalty. It was now or never. I could either let this moment unfold, with its unexpected complexities, or risk losing what fragile bond we had just begun to navigate. I need time to think, I proclaimed, my voice shaking yet resolute. Each of you has a role in this, and I need to figure out what it all means. But just as the words left my lips, a sudden beep echoed from the monitors above, breaking the surface of our anxiety. The nurse rushed in, her usual calm demeanor replaced with urgency. We need to check on the baby's vitals. In that moment, the focus shifted, drawing attention away from our emotional battleground to the tangible reality of our child. And I felt a sharp jab of fear piercing through the tight knots of tenderness and uncertainty we had just begun to unravel. And as I watched the nurse lean over my son, a truth struck me like lightning. Could any of us truly be ready for the fight ahead when something so innocent lay at the heart of all this chaos? Each heartbeat felt more critical than the last, pulling me toward a realization I couldn't yet articulate. As the room filled with hushed urgency and cloaked worry, I was left with a pit in my stomach, wondering if this wasn't just another beginning, but perhaps an ominous warning of all that was yet to come. The delicate balance of hope and fear hovered hauntingly above us, waiting for the next moment to expose the fragility of our new reality. With rapid steps, the nurse moved around the room, her fingers deftly gliding over the equipment, occasionally glancing at the monitors as she checked my son's vitals. The beeping intensified, creating a rhythm that seemed to pulse through my veins, matching the quickening beats of my heart. Adrenaline surged, mingling with a growing knot of dread in my stomach. Is everything okay? I caught myself asking, my voice trembling as I clutched at Lawrence's arm, seeking stability in his presence as I felt my old fears claw their way back to the surface. It was a pathetic attempt to mask the vulnerability creeping in with every flutter of the machines. The nurse met my gaze, her demeanor on the cusp of professionalism and compassion. We just need to monitor him closely for a few more minutes. Sometimes there are fluctuations right after birth. We're being cautious. Just give us a moment. Her reassurance was laced with authority, but my insides twisted nonetheless. Lawrence took a step closer to me, leaning down to speak softly, his breath a warm whisper against my ear. He's strong, Sarah. He's going to be okay. We need to hold on to that. Yet even as he spoke those words, I could hear the undercurrents of doubt woven into his tone. As I watched the nurse attending to our child with focused intensity, I found my thoughts drifting. How had we arrived at this moment? It felt like only yesterday when Lawrence and I were dreaming about parenthood, the little things we'd share, the love we'd wrap around our family like an unbreakable shield. Yet here we were, standing on an uncertain precipice, shadows of our past colliding violently with the present. Nora shifted uneasily beside me, a glimmer of concern passing over her face as her gaze bounced between the nurse and myself. It was innate to want to protect me, but I felt trapped under her scrutiny. "Do you really believe what he said?" she quietly asked, the fierceness from earlier dissipating into desperation. "That he actually wants to change?" I could only shrug, my heart heavy with uncertainty. Did anyone truly have the capacity to change, or did we simply learn to mask our flaws behind good intentions? It felt like a riddle I lacked the courage to solve, especially now with so many lives hanging by a delicate thread. Just then, my father stepped forward, determination etched across his features. He placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You know I'm here for you, Sarah. We'll figure this out no matter what. Just remember that you deserve support, not pain." His words sliced through the swirling chaos tied around my heart. I appreciated his determination, but could I truly lean on him when the foundation of everything I believed in was shifting? But what if Lawrence doesn't really mean it? What if this is just a phase? I said, my voice wavering as I sought clarity in this storm. "I can't change the past, but I can fight for our future together." Lawrence interjected, the desperation evident in his eyes, shimmering along the surface of his bravado. "Please, Sarah, trust me this one time. I know I haven't earned it, but I want to try." But could I trust him? I imagined the pain of my Sonif, raising him in a world that felt uncertain, living in fear of being let down by the very people who should have been pillars of strength. I wanted to offer my child an idyllic life, filled with laughter and heartwarming memories. But would I be shackling him with the weight of unresolved conflict? As if sensing my turmoil, the little one let out a soft coo from the bassinet, and a spark of warmth ignited within me, pushing back against the shadow of doubt. I took a breath, allowing the sound to envelop my heart. He was innocent and perfect, and every fiber of my being needed to fight for him, not just for his well-being, but for the strength he would unknowingly impart to me in moments like these. That I just need to see him being that father, I said quietly, struggling to find the right words. "I need to see proof that things can be different." Lawrence nodded, as if my request had anchored him in a deeper understanding of the predicament. "I understand. He'll do whatever it takes," he promised, sincerity laced through his tone. His eyes darted to the nurse, his entire demeanor shifting into a protective one. "I will show you." But even as the words settled into the air like fog, I felt the cracks beginning to form. It wasn't merely about his declarations. It was about the lengthy journey ahead that would require patience, understanding, and strength to confront the ghosts lurking within our history. Would he be willing to dig deep, to confront the darkness that had defined our relationship? The nurse finished adjusting a few final details with our baby, then turned to us with a forced smile. "He's stabilizing. You can relax a bit. He just needed to be checked closely for a few minutes." Sighs of relief passed like currency through us, the tension loosening, even if only momentarily. I felt the warmth of Lawrence's hand clasp mine, the contact both grounding and electrifying. But as I looked into his eyes, they were veiling something deeper, in unspoken battle roiling behind them that I was not yet ready to face. "Can you go see the doctor and find out what's next?" I asked, pulling him from his thoughts. He nodded, his face determined. As he left the room, I shifted to my father, whose watchful gaze only spoke of concern. And just as I started to breathe easier, a muffled voice echoed from the hallway, cutting through my peace like a jagged knife. "I need to know what's going on with my grandson." A familiar voice pierced through the fog of my momentary relief, commanding and assertive. My heart lurched as I turned, the blood draining from my face in stark realization. My mother had arrived unannounced, and everything I had fought so hard to protect now felt as if it could shatter with her very presence. "Mom," I exclaimed, the word barely escaping before her eyes hardened, locking into mine with the intensity of storm. I had always dreaded this moment, her judgment, her disdain now prepared to descend upon the fragile situation we had only just begun to navigate. As she stepped into the room, my world shrank in on itself, a tide of emotions swelling within me, crashing against the shore of courage I had fought to build. I clung to that strength, knowing that whatever awaited me was going to test everything I thought I could handle. It felt like standing once again on the precipice, with the abyss yawning below, teetering dangerously close to heartbreak. Only this time, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending that everything would be okay. The air felt heavy, thick with tension, as my mother stepped into the room. Her presence, brimming with controlled chaos, seemed to suck the warmth from the air, leaving only an awkward chill that settled firmly in the pit of my stomach. I forced my eyes to meet hers, a battle of wills that felt all too familiar. "Where is he?" she demanded, her voice sharp and demanding like it always was. The vulnerability I had just begun to piece together flickered like a candle caught in a gust of wind. He's in the bassinet." "He's okay, Mom," I said, forcing the words from my throat, my heart racing at the sight of my infant son, vulnerable as he lay swaddled in soft fabric. "He just needed some extra monitoring," I added, my voice slightly steadier despite the tremor beneath it. My mother's eyes darkened as they swept over me, her expression a tapestry of disappointment and disbelief. "You really thought it was a good idea to have a child with Lawrence? After everything?" "Mom, please," I implored, longing for patience and understanding, a plea that felt destined to vanish into the chasm forming between us. "It's not just about Lawrence. It's about our son now." "No, Sarah. It's always been about him." Her voice dropped an octave, contempt painted over each syllable. "You're putting that child at risk by keeping him around someone like Lawrence. You know how he is." I pulled my lips into a tight line, knowing she wouldn't understand the complexities of our relationship, the layers of hurt and hope intertwined. "He's trying. He wants to change. I just can't walk away before giving him a chance to prove that." A bitter laugh escaped from her lips. "And how many chances does he get to fail before it affects your son?" Before I could answer, Lawrence re-entered the room, his brow furrowed, a blend of resolve and dread washing over him as he took in the scene of me mother's imposing presence, my tense posture, and the tiny life sleeping so innocently nearby. His hand gripped the doorframe, as if it was the only thing keeping him from crumbling. "What's going on?" he asked, instinctively glancing back and forth between us. "Just a little family discussion," my mother replied, her tone dripping with false sweetness, though the intent burned in her narrowed gaze. Lawrence shifted on his feet, visibly unsettled. "I thought I could get some updates from the doctor, but don't pretend everything's fine. Children shouldn't grow up in toxic environments." My mother's voice left no room for argument, her words sharp enough to cut into the very fabric of my resolve. "Mom, it's not toxic, it's complicated," I countered, but the longer I spoke, the more I felt like a child defending an indefensible choice. The weight of her expectations lingered like an unwelcome shadow over my heart, blanketing my ability to find strength. Lawrence's expression faltered, his defenses crumbling under the weight of my mother's scrutiny. "I just want to be a good father. I messed up before, but see, you're still messing up." My mother interjected with a dismissive wave of her hand, her disdain for him barely masked. Suddenly, the weight of her accusations became too much to bear, crushing my chest and stealing the breath from my lungs. "Why can't you just support me? Just once?" I hollered, more overwhelmed than I intended to be. "I'm trying to navigate something I never expected, and all you do is tear me down." A sharp intake of breath followed, a wounded silence hovering over us like a storm cloud waiting to burst. As my words hung in the air, I realized the truth. I was asking for her support in a moment that had the potential to shatter everything I had known. Lawrence met my gaze, his features softening, offering silent encouragement that reminded me of the connection we shared despite the uncertainty. At that moment, I finally looked down at our baby, whose innocent face seemed to aglow under the sterile lights of the hospital room. Was this tiny miracle going to grow up in the crossfire of my past and present? The thought gave birth to a fierce protectiveness within me, simmering alongside an unbearable ache for understanding. Then, just as my heart swelled with the warmth of my child, the door swung open again. A woman clad in crisp scrubs stepped in, the name tag on her chest reading Dr. Campos. Her presence drew immediate attention, shifting the tension clinging to the air. "Good news," she announced, her tone airy, cutting through the darkness that had enveloped us. "Your son is stable and healthy. He's ready to be taken to the nursery for routine care. But Just as relief began to wash over me, my mother's words crawled up from the depths of my fear, ready to snare us once more. What's the real prognosis? You know how he could turn out before she could continue. Dr. Campos met her gaze firmly, halting the impending scorn. It's crucial to maintain a nurturing environment for a child. If you have concerns about parental capacities, I advise you to discuss them in a different context. My heart fluttered at the unexpected defense, an unexpected kindness that felt like a tendril of hope. It was swiftly overshadowed by an echoing sound, a soft chime from the nearby machines that triggered a deep-seated anxiety within me. The monitor by my baby made a new sound, a steady, yet concerning rhythm that began to blur the lines between safety and frailty. He's okay, right? I dared to ask, my voice barely a whisper, my body taut with fear as I leaped toward the bassinet. But even as I moved, I felt Lawrence's hand slide around my waist, anchoring me amidst the chaos. We're getting through this together, Sarah, he murmured, though I sensed the uncertainty still tangled in his words. Just then, a nurse rushed in, urgency painted across her face, and my heart dropped. The comfort ID felt a moment earlier fell through my fingertips, slipping into an abyss of dread. The nurse and doctor shared a brief look. I could see it in their eyes, the strain of their roles balancing life and death in that instant. We need to check his vitals again, the nurse said hurriedly, stepping towards the bassinet as I held my breath, feeling a tremor of fear ripple through the room. As they worked with renewed intensity, my mother's voice cut through the fog, a cold breeze sharpening every word. Sarah, you need to choose what is best for your child. My heart stuttered at the implications of her statement. What do you mean? I gasped, for in her eyes, I read the shadow of an impending storm that could change everything. Would she ask for custody? Would she try to drive a wedge between my family? But before I could voice my fears, Dr. Campos turned sharply, her eyes darting back to mine, and what I saw there sent a chill racing through my veins. We need to talk about your son's blood work. There's something you need to know. Each word dripped with a power that coursed through the space, colliding with everything that I had fought for. My heart raced, and I instinctively reached for Lawrence's Hondan anchor in the rising tide of uncertainty that was about to drag us further under. Because in that moment, I understood that our fight was only beginning, and whatever revelations lay ahead could either strengthen or destroy the fragile bonds we had worked so hard to build. The hospital room felt smaller now, the very air thickened with apprehension. Lawrence's fingers intertwined with mine offered a fleeting respite, yet my heart raced with the dread unfurling within me like smoke from a distant fire. Dr. Campos's voice echoed in my mind, an ominous note in a symphony that had suddenly changed tempo. Something you need to know. The phrase lingered, pressuring me to confront shadows I didn't yet understand. As I clung to Lawrence, a sudden surge of memories flooded moments of promises exchanged in the quiet of late nights, laughter punctuating easy days, and the warmth of our son's tiny form nestled safely between us. But now, standing on the precipice of uncertainty, I felt like a stranger in my own family's narrative. Sarah, Lawrence murmured, breaking the silence that hung heavily between us. His brow furrowed, and I could see the weight of his own fears reflected in his eyes. Whatever it is, we can handle it. Together. Can we? I barely managed to form the words, my throat constricting. A desire for hope warred with the agonizing realization that sometimes together was not enough to shield from the harsh truths lurking in the dark. My gaze flickered toward my mother, who stood rigid and stern, doubt cloaked over her features like a shroud. Sarah, Dr. Campos urged, stepping forward, clear purpose in her eyes that made my pulse quicken. When conducting your son's blood work, we found some results that we need to discuss in detail. I believe it's important for you to understand the potential implications. I don't want to hear it, I whispered, backing away slightly from the bassinet. The soft coos from a nearby baby seemed to mock my unraveling, pulsating joy that felt irretrievably out of reach. I can't. Lawrence squeezed my hand tighter, his palm warm against the chill of my growing fears. We need to hear what she has to say. Sarah, he said gently but firmly. "We owe it to our son to—" A tear blurred my vision as I saw the man I loved standing there, steady and resolute amid the storm. He was trying, and a part of me wanted to lean into his strength, to trust that we could weather whatever storm awaited us. Yet, in the back of my mind, whispers of my mother's voice swirled, warning of the dangers that lurked in the shadows cast by hope. Fine. I took a shuddering breath and nodded, fighting back the panic that threatened to overtake me. "Please, just tell us." Dr. Campos glanced at the nurse, who stood solemnly by, her hands poised as if ready to act at any moment. "Your son's blood work indicates some irregularities that may require further testing. We could be looking at genetic conditions, and while many can be managed with care and treatment, I want to make sure you are fully aware of the possibilities." The words fell like stones, heavy and unyielding. Each syllable sunk deeply into my chest, leaving hollowness in its wake. Lawrence's grip faltered momentarily, and I turned to meet his gaze. Fear spiraled between us, threading a new tension that crackled in the air. "What kind of conditions?" I stammered, the question a fragile whisper, my heart lodging in my throat. "Possibilities range widely, from mild to severe," Dr. Campos replied. "But please know that many families facing similar diagnoses find ways to adapt and thrive. It's crucial to have a comprehensive follow-up with genetic specialists who can chart a course for your son's care." "Adapt and thrive," I murmured, the words lighting a flicker of hope as they collided with the chaos in my chest. Yet the stark reality tugged at my insides, intertwining despair and determination. My mind raced, conjuring up visions of the life I had dreamed for my son, one unmarred by shadows of uncertainty. Suddenly, my mother interjected, her voice penetrating the tender moment. "But what if it's severe? What if he's not able to do the things children should?" Across the room, her questioning gaze landed on Lawrence, who shifted uneasily beneath the intensity of her scrutiny. "Mom, stop," I pleaded, desperation rising in my throat. "You can't say that right now." But her words hung heavily, a perfect reflection of my own fears now flickering to life. What if our family was forever altered in a way we couldn't comprehend? What if our dreams twisted into nightmares we could not escape? Lawrence's face morphed, torn between resolve and fear as he faced my mother. "We will face this together, no matter how challenging it may be. You need to understand that every child is unique, and regardless of what lies ahead, our son deserves our support and love." The unyielding strength in his words resonated within me, a beacon of hope against the rising tide of doubt. I could almost feel the warmth of our tiny son cradled in my arms, and with it came the ferocity of a mother's love rising to protect him at all cost. As the doctor continued to explain the next steps, my focus drifted, landing on the bassinet. There, amidst the clinical lights, our son lay peacefully asleep, unaware of the storm swirling around him. That innocence wrapped around my heart like a shield, reminding me of everything worth fighting for. Just as the doctor finished her explanation and the nurse made her way back to check on the monitors, my mother leaned in closer, her voice lowered to a silken whisper. "You can't let him grow up thinking everything will be fine. You'll need to consider what's truly best." Before I could respond, a loud beep erupted from the monitor, arresting all conversation, sending my heart catapulting into my throat. I watched as Lawrence propelled into action, instinctively reaching for our son, his protective instincts igniting amidst the chaos. Suddenly, a flurry of nurses and doctors rushed in, and panic crackled in the air. "We need to stabilize him," one called out, urgency ringing in her tone. The room now becoming a whirlwind of voices and actions, I stood frozen, fear merging with disbelief as the world around me blurred, the reality of our situation crashing down like a tidal wave. In the chaos, I felt Lawrence pulling me back, grounding me. "We'll get through this, Sarah. We're a family." And yet, as they worked feverishly to decipher the sudden alarm, my heart sank with the weight of a new tempest brewing. I began to wonder if the real fight was about to begin. Before I could grasp the reality of what was unfolding, I looked at my husband, saw the fear etched on his face, and wondered if our family would be whole when the dust settled. In that moment, I recognized the delicate thread binding us together. Was it strong enough to endure what lay ahead? Or were we set on a path leading to the very end I feared the most? The clock ticked on, and in the swell of chaos around us, time seemed to freeze, a poignant reminder of the fragility that tethered our hearts and the choices that would either break us or bind us closer together in this tumultuous journey of parenthood. The sounds of rushing feet and hurried voices filled the room, creating a cacophony that drowned out the quiet coos of my son and swallowed my thoughts whole. I felt Lawrence's presence next to me like a storm anchor, steady but taut, grounding me as the world around us shifted. My chest constricted tighter, panic threading its cold fingers through my body. That "Is he okay?" I managed to croak out, the words catching like shards of glass in my throat. I wanted to believe the doctors could fix everything, that they would reach into the chaos and pull out the ease we had known just moments before. The doctor's expression was grave, her brow creased with a mixture of concentration and concern. "We're checking his vitals now," she replied, her voice steady yet strained, "but we believe it may simply be a response to a sudden change in his environment. He needs us to act quickly." I could feel the weight of my mother's gaze on us, her worry mingling with the fear that seeped into the very fabric of my being. For the first time in my life, I wanted to push her away, to bat away her voice that harbored only skepticism. "It's just a precaution," she had murmured earlier, her fingers tapping anxiously on the back of a chair. "Children can have complications all the time." But this was this was our son. As the monitors beeped rhythmically, I felt as though I stood on the edge of a cliff, ready to plunge into an abyss of despair. "Sarah, look at me." The soft command in Lawrence's tone pulled me from my spiraling thoughts, and I turned to see his deep brown eyes, filled with a fierce determination that momentarily calmed the storm raging inside me. "Whatever happens, we're in this together. He needs you to be strong." His affirmation wrapped around me. But just as quickly, a shadow flitted across my mind. Would my strength even matter? What if this moment was the beginning of everything we had feared? Those words lingered with sticky heaviness, mingling dangerously with the air thick with uncertainty. As the nurses worked meticulously, I caught a glimpse of Lawrence's hands moving restlessly at his sides, his nerves palpable. He glanced at our son, then back at me, trying to mask the tremor of vulnerability in his voice. "He'll always stand by your side, no matter how stormy it gets. Do you believe me?" The question hung between us like a surrender and a question mark all at once. I wanted to believe him with every fiber of my being, but doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest at an intimate gathering. All I could do was nod, my throat tightening around confession. "This isn't fair," I finally managed, the words breaking free in a rush of anguish. "We're supposed to be celebrating. We wanted this. How can they make everything so uncertain?" "I know," he whispered, brushing my hand with a feather-light touch. "But we always knew that parenthood wouldn't be perfect. We knew there would be sacrifices." The affection in his voice made my heart ache, gladness mixed with dread wrestling in my chest. A nurse approached us, her face calm but serious. "Your son is stable for now, but we will be keeping a close watch. We're concerned about his blood sugar levels." Steve dropped significantly. I felt my hope dim slightly. Would our precious boy always be in the shadow of fragility? My mother's voice echoed disdainfully in my mind. What kind of life would he have? And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just wrestling with the uncertainty of our son's future. I was grappling with the anxiety of my own inadequacies. "Sarah, talk to me," Lawrence said, prompting me to focus on him instead of the whirlwind around us. "What are you feeling?" His approach felt like a life buoy in a relentless sea, and I clung to it. "I don't want a life of constant worry," I admitted, tears pooling in my eyes. "I want him to be brave, to explore the world without restrictions. I want to fix this for him." Lawrence's expression softened, and I saw a flicker of something painful in his gaze, profound understanding, but also something deeper, a worry that threatened to crack the surface of our union. "So do I," he said quietly. "But it's not about fixing. It's about loving and being there through every step. We weren't given a manual, Sarah, in his effort to reach me. Something bigger than our fear emerged. A tentative strength started to weave through my trepidation as Lawrence held steady, embodying resilience. I looked up, gripping his hand tighter. I don't want to scare him, didn't want to let him down. You won't, he assured me, but the uncertainty in his eyes revealed a crack in the foundation of our promise. We had promised each other a lifetime of unwavering love, but how could we uphold that promise when our very future felt so precarious? As we waited for more news, an unexpected comforted washed over me. A young volunteer entered the room, holding sunflowers in her hands. The yellow blooms, no doubt, a welcome distraction from the gray that seemed to envelop us all. I thought you might like these, she said gently, placing the flowers on the table nearby. They bring a little sunshine to difficult situations. You're so kind. I managed a tiny flicker of appreciation igniting amidst the turmoil. The gesture stirred something deep within me, reminding me that while darkness coiled around hope like a vine, kindness could poke through the cracks, repetitively urging life to bloom even where shadows loomed. Just as I felt a fleeting sense of light, the doctor returned, and the air thickened again with anticipation. Her brow, once furrowed, was now even more serious. I need to discuss our findings in detail. A new dread settled over me like a heavy cloak. Time unfurled into suspension as I summoned every ounce of courage to brace for what was next. But as the words began to tumble from her lips, each word distinct and heavy, my heart drifted into a vast silence. I felt Lawrence's hand slip from mine, fear blooming in the new space between us. Sarah, he choked out, we have to talk about the future. Suddenly, a loud beep erupted again, chaos returning, the storm crashing in yet again as the doctors rushed back to the monitors. In that instant, my heart crashed with a revelation of future that had once been filled with potential was narrowing against a backdrop of increasing uncertainty. From now on, we need to discuss options, the doctor continued, as my breath caught in my throat. We need to talk about who will care for him in the event that my world shattered around me, igniting a new wave of fear in an already crumbling universe. The question hung thick with an answer I never wanted to hear. Would the love we fought so fiercely for sustain us? Or will we find ourselves fighting for the very essence of our son's autonomy? And as the chaos ebbed and flowed around me, I could only cling to a sliver of hope. He is fragile as the sunflowers now wilting under the intensity of our reality. Would that hope survive amid the tides of uncertainty threatening to drown it? The fluorescent lights above flickered ominously, casting a sterile glow that seemed to mock my turmoil. Moments cascaded uneasily, and with each heavy beat of the beeping monitor, it felt like our reality was being stripped away, revealing layers of fear that had always lingered just beneath the surface. Options, the doctor's voice echoed in my mind. My pulse raced, each word a tidal wave crashing against my fragile resolve. What could she possibly mean? The aftershocks of her implication sent tremors through the very core of my being. Lawrence's absence, the tug of his hand, released, felt monumental. I turned to find him pacing, his back tense and rigid, and in that moment, I feared his silent anguish more than the doctor's grave pronouncement. This was not just about our son anymore. It felt almost as if it were about us. The nurse stood nearby, her expression a mix of sympathy and professionalism. I sensed her keen awareness of the storm brewing between us, but also the burden of having to observe without interference. It was as if we were the center of a whirlwind, allowing everything around us to remain untouched, yet internally we were crumbling. Lawrence, I called out, forcing the syllables past my tightened throat. We need to talk. He paused, shoulders squared against the world, and turned slowly to face me. Talk about what, Sarah? The cool edge in his tone cut through the moment like glass. About the future of our son, I ventured cautiously, feeling the impossible magnitude of what lay ahead. About what the doctor just said. His jaw clenched tightly, and I could almost visualize the thoughts racing through his mind, colliding in a cacophony of despair. What's there to say? We're not prepared for this. We've never been prepared for any of this. I am scared, I admitted, the tremor in my voice betraying the confidence I had tried to exude. But what if we can navigate this together? No one knows what will happen at the doctor, not us. We have to hold on to hope. Lawrence laughed harshly, the sound laced with disbelief, echoing against the sterile walls. Hope? Sarah, hope won't change the facts of our life right now. His words fell like leaden weights, heavy yet cutting straight to the core. The distance between us, the emotional chasm widened with every harsh syllable. We can't just give up, I pleaded, desperately searching his eyes for any flicker of determination. For our son's sake, we have to keep trying. You know we owe him that. I don't know what we owe him anymore, he grumbled. The world we envisioned has collapsed. Can't you see that? The raw reality of his statement stung, and I felt a familiar clenching in my chest. We had always vowed to face life together, through joy and pain. Yet here we were, on opposing ends of a battlefield neither of us wanted to fight. Do you want to know what I think? He spat, still pacing. Even if we fight for him, we might not be enough. Maybe it's easier to just let go. The ground beneath my feet trembled, and the hollowness of his words reverberated within me. How dared he even entertain the idea of walking away from the hardest fight of our lives? Behind his anger, I glimpsed his fear of loss, of failure. You can't mean that, I whispered. Lawrence, our son deserves a chance. We have to be the ones who fight for him. His silence stretched, as if he were weighing my words against the gravity of our reality. Then, just when I thought he might relent, he turned on his heel and shot me a look full of painful vulnerability. What if it's too late to fight? The words lashed through me with unexpected force, igniting a fire within that I didn't know was there. You're saying this as if we've already lost. But what if this moment right here is where we begin? What if this is our chance to forge a new path? For a brief second, I watched the storm inside his eyes waver, uncertainty mingling with something softer. Then just like that, his resolve hardened again. You don't get it, do you? Every day could be a struggle I'm not sure I can face with you. A shattering realization washed over me. It wasn't just our son's future that felt precarious. It felt like our marriage was hanging by a fragile thread. The implications crashed in waves. Were we truly capable of withstanding this tempest together, or would the burden of grief and worry drive us apart? A nurse entered the room just as I felt my heart begin to sink even further. Her eyes darted between Lawrence and me, sensing the crack in our armor. She offered us a gentle smile, and I couldn't help but think how strange it was that kindness erupted in the middle of our anguish. Excuse me, she said softly. I have a few forms for you to sign regarding your son's care. But first, is there anything I can get you? A glass of water? Some tea? I felt a flicker of gratitude for her willingness to help, but the tension between Lawrence and me surged like an electric current. Just give us a minute, he replied through clenched teeth. Turning back to me, he quietly whispered, I can't keep pretending that everything will just be okay. I can't. And in that moment, I was taken aback not only by the starkness of his admission, but by a shattering thought that crept in. What if you don't believe we can make it through? I challenged, voice trembling. Lawrence, as long as there's breath left in me, I will fight for my son, for us. I refused to give into the shadows of despair. As the nurse waited patiently outside the door, I took a deep breath, emboldened by a fierce need to make him see the light that might be hiding amidst the dark. If you turn away now, how will you face our son yourself? Please don't walk away. He looked torn as if the weight of our love, intertwined with the looming dread of our reality, was too much to bear. I reached for him, my fingers trembling as I tried to connect. I just don't want to hurt anymore, he murmured, raw and fragile. The vulnerability in him struck a chord deep within, wrapping around my heart like a vice. It was evident we were both so utterly lost in this whirlwind. The intensity of the storm, both around and within us, had rendered us vulnerable in the worst way possible. But before I could respond, a discordant sound echoed across the room, the monitors blaring a defiant warning. The nurse rushed back in, and suddenly all plans for heartfelt confessions and reconciliations were tossed aside as chaos resumed. "I need both of you to step back," she instructed tersely, hands moving quickly as she activated the alarm. My heart dropped as I felt a surge of dread crackle through the air. Lawrence and I exchanged a look in unspoken acknowledgement of the collective fear that blanketed us before the medical team swarmed in. A whirlwind of motion and frantic voices. I stepped aside. The events unfolding before me shifted into slow motion. My heart raced, but nothing could shield me from the thoughts threatening to drown me. What if we were unable to hold on to the future we dreamed of? The doctor's voice rang out amid the chaos, firm yet tinged with urgency. "We're losing him." My chest tightened painfully at the words, and in that moment, as if a final byline had been drawn, I realized that the struggle wasn't solely for our son's future, it was for everything we had built together, teetering on the brink of breaking. With a mix of dread and desperation, I couldn't help but contemplate the alarming possibility of losing not just our child that day, but also the last semblance of our union. Would we stand together, or would the weight of it all drive us further apart? The din of urgency enveloped the room, a mechanical orchestra punctuated by frantic commands and the relentless beeping of machines. Lawrence and I stood frozen, ensnared in a web of fear thicker than the sterile air surrounding us. I can still recall the icy fingers of dread wrapping around my heart, squeezing tighter with every panic shout and the frantic shift of medical professionals all too accustomed to chaos. In that moment, the world shrank to the narrowest of focuses: our son, my heart, our future. I could see the determination on the doctor's face as she maneuvered through the swarm of nurses. I desperately wished to leap into action, to shout, to demand answers. But what choices did I have as helplessness clawed at my insides like 1,000 fingernails? "Stay back," one of the nurses instructed firmly, the weight of authority in her tone. I felt Lawrence's hand slip away from mine, as if the tether connecting us had been severed. He stepped further back, his brow clenched in profound concern, uncertainty radiating off him. In that fraction of time, I pondered whether the distance between us was both literal and emotional, a growing chasm fueled by our fears. The doctor shouted urgent commands, and hospital equipment beeped wildly, registering a battle against time and fate. I wanted to scream at the universe, to shake it into a semblance of normalcy, to plead for some sort of rationality in this moment that felt like a nightmare painted in chilling colors. Why was this happening? Our child deserved more than this. "Sarah!" Lawrence's voice broke through my haze, pulling me from the quagmire of desperation. I turned to him, my own heart pounding painfully like a war drum. The pained expression he wore conveyed 1,000 unsaid emotions, all echoing the fear that loomed over us. "What do we do?" he begged, and it struck me how young he looked in that moment, so small against the enormity of our situation. "Fight," I whispered, the word escaping my throat like a miracle. "We can't let go of hope." "Not now." Lawrence met my gaze, and I saw the flicker of resolve in his eyes, a brief spark that fueled my own determination. With every heartbeat, it reminded me that we were still a family, that our son was still fighting, even if it felt like we were losing ground. The thought anchored me, wrapping around my heart like a lifeline. "Whatever it takes," I continued, gathering my breath. "Whatever we have to face, we need to stand behind him together." "Together," he echoed, as if seeking assurance from the word itself. But then, the reality of the situation sank deeper than the skin. Each second stretched agonizingly as the medical team continued their efforts. My son was the heartbeat that kept us linked, the fragile thread tethering us to the possibility of joy amidst despair. Suddenly, the chaos pierced through my haze, a light illuminating the cracks of darkness. I caught sight of the doctor pause momentarily and assess the situation. It was a small motion, but every part of me clung to it. Had one moment where determination sparked something deep within. And then I found myself stepping forward against the pull of fear, against those who dashed about with their sterile uniforms and clipped tones. You can do this. I found myself yelling, directed at the team working to save my son, my voice a mix of authoritative motherly grit and desperate belief. A flicker of surprise danced across the doctor's features, but it quickly steadied into the focused resolve that I wished to embody. Keep fighting, I cried out, the surge of hope igniting embers buried deep within me. He won't give up, and neither will we. Lawrence's hand found mine again, fingers entwining in a fierce grip, and for a moment, we were tethered in that singular call to rally our strength. The medical team reacted not just to my words, but to the sheer will of a mother unyielding in her resolve, grappling against despair. Amidst the continuation of alarm beeps, our son's little form lay in the center of it all, fragile yet resolute. Each breath he took, each tiny whimper, encompassed the will to live beyond the limitations that fear had laid upon him. I caught my breath, feeling the adrenaline surge through me, buoyed by the shared understanding between Lawrence and me. Hope was something we could cling to, something we could pass on to our son as he fought this battle that no child should ever have to face. And just like that, in the middle of uncertainty and chaos, the beeping transformed. The numbers on the monitors seemed to stabilize, and the frantic tones softened as the color on my baby's cheeks returned. It felt like a miracle. His vitals are stabilizing, a breathless nurse shouted in shock. Her eyes widened as they spoke. We did it. Those words spiraled through me like sunlight breaking through dark clouds. I broke into tears. The tension that had coiled around us began to unfurl, releasing the breath of relief I didn't even know I had been holding. Little by little, hope was rising against the shadows that loomed over us. In the afterglow of that moment, I turned to find Lawrence beside me, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears, shimmering with a wave of gratitude and fragile hope. The fractures between us seemed to knit together, woven by a shared conviction that we could tackle whatever lay ahead. With our son as our compass, we could continue to forge our way through the haze. The darkness could only hold power over us if we let it. We both stared at our son, still so small yet so mighty, finally surrendering to the notion that life, regardless of its harsh realities, was worth the fight. And as the doctors continued to work diligently, I leaned closer to Lawrence, feeling the warmth of his presence. Together? I asked softly, looking into his eyes, seeking affirmation in our newfound resilience. Together, he whispered back, sealing our pact. With that, I felt a surge of determination flow through me. Whatever battles were still to come, whatever hurdles remained in our path, we would meet them head-on, choosing love over fear, nurturing over despair. I reached once more for Lawrence's hand, intertwining our fingers as we stood united in the face of the unknown. And with the first soft stir of the baby against my chest, I allowed a full breath of resolve to spill out like an unbreakable promise. We would keep fighting for our son, for our love, and for every ray of hope this beautiful life still offered us. Together, always, I murmured as the storm began to settle, leaving only the shimmering echo of a family standing strong in the face of uncertainty. The beeping monitors and steady breaths became a symphony, and with love, we had conquered fear. That day, amid chaos and despair, I learned that our greatest strength lay not in perfection, but in the shared will to keep fighting for each other against everything that threatened to tear us apart. And here, I found my answer. Love was enough, and together, we were more than enough. Because sometimes, hope doesn't just survive, it flourishes, beautiful and fierce, a testament to the profound resilience we uncover when faced with profound uncertainty. And as I cradle my son in my arms, I knew love would always lead the way forward, lighting the path as we ventured into this vast new tomorrow. And above all, that unwavering truth echoed within my hope is the heartbeat of every family, and together we would let it shine through.